until they are thrown out of the body. And the appendix, of course, has long mystified doctors in what role it actually has ever played inside the human body. It has been long discussed by medical healthcare professionals to have no reason to be there. But recently, surgeons and immunologists at Duke University Medical School believe that the appendix does indeed serve an important function inside the human body. The appendix appears to help produce and protect the good bacteria in the intestine. The appendix, they say, acts like a good bacteria factory that cultivates and preserves good bacteria nutrition to help keep your body healthy. The liver produces substances that break down fats, convert glucose to glycogen, produce urea, the main substance of urine, make certain amino acids, the building blocks of protein, filter harmful substances from the blood, such as alcohol. They store vitamins and minerals, vitamins A, D, K, and B12, and maintain a proper level of glucose in the body. The liver is also responsible for producing cholesterol. It produces about 80% of the cholesterol in your body. The gallbladder is a small non-vital organ that aids in the digestive process and stores bile produced in the liver. The pancreas serves a few functions in the body. It completes the job of breaking down protein, carbohydrates, and fats using digestive juices of the pancreas combined with juices from the intestines. The pancreas also secretes hormones that affect the level of sugar in the blood. They produce chemicals that neutralize stomach acids that pass from the stomach into the small intestine by using substances in pancreatic juice. Pancreas contains isolates of Langerhans, which are tiny groups of specialized cells that are scattered throughout the organ. These cells secrete glucagon, which raises the level of glucose or sugar in the blood, insulin, which stimulates cells to use glucose, somatostatin, which regulates the secretion of glucagons and insulin. Close to the end of the digestive system is the rectum, which is the muscular ring that is at the end of the large intestine. Its function is to keep the intestine sealed shut until the need to pass feces arises. And last but not least, the anus excretes solid bodily wastes. Now that we've gone through all the major organs in the digestive system, we can move on to mechanical and chemical digestion. Now, mechanical digestion is the first step of the digestion process and begins immediately after ingestion. Mechanical digestion is the process of chewing food by teeth to break down the ingested food into smaller pieces, or a bolus, that are more readily digested through chemical digestion. Examples of mechanical digestion, as I said, were chewing, and peristalsis, which is the contraction of smooth muscles to propel contents through the digestive tract. And chemical digestion is accomplished through the use of chemicals known as digestive enzymes. These enzymes and water are responsible for the breakdown of complex molecules. These complex molecules, such as fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, are digested into smaller molecules. These smaller parts can then be absorbed for use by the cells. Now, some examples of chemical digestion are saliva to break down the food in the mouth, bile released from the liver to help digest fats, proteins in the stomach to break down food, and nutrients absorbed by the small intestine. Okay, now that we're through with mechanical and chemical digestion, we can now talk about something called absorption. But what is absorption? Well, absorption is the process of one substance passing through into another. Absorption takes place at many different sites along the alimentary canal, which is a fancy name for the digestive system. For example, during digestion in the stomach, large proteins break down into smaller proteins. protein, carbohydrate, lipid, and most vitamin absorption occur in the stomach. The villi aid the small intestine in absorption because they create a larger surface area for the small intestine, which increases the rate of absorption of the nutrients into the bloodstream. And finally, the large intestine are involved with the absorption of water from digested material, which is regulated by the hypothalamus, and the reabsorption of sodium, as well as any nutrients that have escaped primary digestion in the small intestine. Well, thank you for braving through this first quarter of my presentation. I assure you it will not be too much longer. I just have one more topic in the digestive system to talk about, and that is the liver. Now, in my opinion, the liver is the most important organ in the digestive system because it has more than one function that is related to homeostasis. The liver is a warehouse. It stores excess glucose in the form of glycogen and vitamins A, B, and D. The liver is a factory. It produces valuable substances including bile for digestion, which is stored in the gallbladder, fibrinogen for blood clotting, and plasma proteins. And finally, the liver is also a detoxification center. It destroys worn-out red blood cells and uses parts of them for bile production. It breaks down excess amino acids and removes certain drugs and hormones from the blood and inactivates or changes them to a less poisonous form. That is all I'm going to touch on for the digestive system. So now we can move on to the respiratory system. Now I'm going to start off by naming some of the major organs of the respiratory system. First off is the lungs. The lungs transport oxygen from the atmosphere into the bloodstream and release carbon dioxide from the bloodstream into the atmosphere. This process is known as breathing. The pleura is the membrane that surrounds the lungs. The nasal cavity is another port for breathing. The air passing through the nasal cavity is warmed or cooled to within 1 degree of body temperature. The epiglottis is not only an organ in the digestive system, it is an organ in the respiratory system also. It allows air to pass through the pharynx into the rest of the respiratory system and prevents food and water from entering the lungs. The trachea, also known as the windpipe, takes in air from the larynx and sends it down a tube which branches off into the bronchi. The bronchi are 2 tubes that split off from the trachea and send air to each lung. The bronchioles are smaller airways that branch off from the bronchi and send air through the inside of the lungs to the alveoli. And the alveoli are little air sacs that allow oxygen to be absorbed by the blood cells for blood transfer throughout the body. Pulmonary capillaries allow the transfer of oxygen into the blood and carbon dioxide out of the blood. The diaphragm helps with breathing. Enlarging the diaphragm creates suction that draws air into the lungs, which is known as inhaling, and when the diaphragm relaxes, air is let out of the lungs, which is known as exhaling.